Hello and welcome back to Memories of a Musician. I'm your host, Vito DeSalvo. Once again, we have a great program for you this evening, featuring a gentleman by the name of Dennis DelleFave. I met Dennis at a place called the Theater Zone in Naples, Florida in February, this past February of this year. Dennis is the author of a theatrical play called The Feud. And it is the feud between Frank Sinatra and Jimmy Roselli, which lasted some 40 years, I believe. We're going to of course, talk to Dennis, and we're going to hear a lot about this. One of my very dear friends and colleagues who still sings in the Sicilian tenors, Aaron Caruso, happened to be singing the part of Jimmy Roselli that night. So my wife and I and a few friends, we gathered up and went to the show. Well, Dennis DelleFave was in the audience, even though he lives on the east coast of Florida, I believe in Boca Raton, and he came over to see the show in Naples. And so after the show, of course, we saw Aaron, and then Aaron introduced me to Dennis, and I thought, geez, this would be a great guest to have on the podcast, because it's very different than most of the musicians that I've had. Here's an author who is writing about two very famous singers. So I thought this was really, really great, really interesting. So anyhow, I want to show you a couple pictures before I bring him on. Here's a picture of Dennis, and actually he's singing. He's on stage, and he sang the role of Jimmy Roselli in several performances of the Feud. And this was one where he was singing. And then here's a picture that I really like, because this is Dennis in Florida. You could tell you're definitely in Florida, and that's kind of how I remember meeting Dennis. And, just a great guy. And as I found out, and I'm going to read about it because I'm going to read his bio now, way more than just being an author. Okay, so let me read his bio before we bring him on. Dennis DelleFave is a multi-talented entertainer, a retired South Florida syndicated radio talk show host, and a former TV host for ABC's WPBF, which is also located in South Florida. Before his highly successful career in media and entertainment, Dennis served as a corporate president in the garment industry from 1970 to 1988. He later transitioned into shaping the Florida music scene, working as the public relations director and booking agent for the Boca Pops Orchestra and the Florida Symphonic Orchestra. But most notably, Dennis is a music historian and the former road manager to the legendary singer Jimmy Roselli. In that role, he witnessed firsthand the intense 40-year rivalry between Frank Sinatra and Jimmy Roselli, two iconic voices who grew up just 5 houses apart in Hoboken, New Jersey. Dennis has channeled those incredible insider stories into a brilliant theatrical play called The Feud, a tribute to Sinatra and Roselli, two guys from Hoboken. Set at the gates of purgatory, the show weaves together unforgettable music, mob history, and the dramatic choices that define their lives. I actually had the opportunity to see this spectacular show firsthand here in Naples, Florida, featuring my dear friend, colleague, and member of the Sicilian tenors, Aaron Caruso, playing the role of Jimmy Roselli. Dennis is here today to share these history-making stories and talk about bringing the Feud to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, now my dear friend here, Dennis DelleFave. Hi, Dennis. How are you?
Wonderful. Wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. I appreciate
it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate you, agreeing to being on the program. You bring a different twist to this show. That's for sure.
My wife tells me the same thing.
That's a different show, huh? Dennis, you were many things in your long and successful career. Let's start with music. When did you first become interested in music? And, did you start on a musical instrument, or did you start with singing? I know that you sing now. And at what age did you get interested in music?
Second grade, believe it or not. I was singing in the chorus in the grammar school choir, and I had a tenor voice. And one day during a little concert that they were having in the school, I sang an Irish folk song. Oh. And with the tenor voice, it must have worked because the teacher took me to every room to sing it. And since that point, from the second grade on, I was always in the choir. So I always loved singing. And going through life, I tried the clarinet for a while. Didn't work for me. I wasn't really crazy about it. But I realized that my voice was my instrument. But I let it go for a while. I didn't really pursue it until I got a little bit older.
Okay. Okay. So when would you say that music really became a passion for you?
I would say probably when I went on the road with Roselli, Jimmy Roselli. I knew Jimmy when I was 18 years old. My brother was married to his aunt, who was his mother's sister, and his mother died at childbirth.
Oh,
and
wow.
I met him when I was 18. He had his first record, and he came to my brother's house with the record, very proud of it, to show it and give it to his aunt. And that's when I first met him.
Wow.
Then I didn't meet him again until I was about 22 years old. And those circumstances were I happened to be very lucky, very young, and I was assistant manager of a 132-room hotel that was part of the El San Juan chain, and it was in North Bergen, New Jersey. And he used to come in there when he was famous with an entourage. So that's how we continued the relationship.
And I see, is it around 1965 that you became his road manager?
Well, what happened was that, Jimmy was a kind of a stubborn guy. You have to understand the music business, and I think you know this, Vito, was run by the mob back in those days. They ran all the music stations, they ran all the jukeboxes, they ran the clubs, the nightclub, you name it, they ran it. And if you didn't play ball with them, you didn't get a job. And Jimmy in the beginning played ball with them, hopefully that he was going to be a star like Sinatra, but it never occurred. They stole his money, they took away his dignity. And one day he came into the hotel without his entourage that he usually had. And he sat down with me and I said, "What happened?" He said, "I broke up with the mob."
Oh.
I said, "You're lucky you're sitting here." I said, "Wait a minute, maybe I should get up. I don't want to take any chances." So what happened was he says, "I have to do 2 more shows for them. One is in Columbus, Ohio, and the other one is Las Vegas." So I said, "Who's going to go with you?" And he said to me, "Nobody." I said, "I'll go." He says, "No, you got a nice job here. You got a cushy job. You're a manager. You've got this beautiful hotel you're running." I said, "Yeah, but music is really my passion." And that's when he said, "Okay." And we went off to Columbus, Ohio, and a whole month in Vegas. That's the start of the relationship.
I see. That's interesting. Wow. So we're going to talk more about, of course, more about Jimmy Roselli later on, but I want you to talk about your work as a South Florida radio talk show host from 1990 to 2005 and how you evolved into a talk show host. How did you get to that?
It's a funny thing. When I was at the Boca Pops, we had a lot of celebrities. And there was a guy who was doing a talk show here by the name of Herbert Bayard Swope. Now, his father was the original first Pulitzer Prize winner for the New York Journal back in 1917. Wow. Herbert himself was the producer for 20th Century Fox. Now, he retired, and he lived in Newport, and he lived in Palm Beach in the winter. And he had a show on radio called Swopescope. He ran from 2 to 4 in the afternoon, 5 days a week. So whenever I had a celebrity coming in for the Pops, like a Vic Damone, Hal Linden, Kingston Trio, I'd bring them there to interview them pre-performances. And one day he wanted to go on vacation. He called me, he says, "Would you cover for me for 2 weeks? I love the way you handle yourself on radio." That's how it started.
Wow, that's great. And you were there like 15 years or something, huh?
15 years. Herbert finally retired. I got my own slot. I used to do 11 at night till 1 in the morning, 5 days a week. Wow. Herbert's father had a house in Sands Point in Long Island. And his parties that he had at that house would have Samuel Goldwyn, Louis B. Mayer, and F. Scott Fitzgerald rented the house across the canal. And he used to see all the parties at the Swope house, And what happened was that was his inspiration for The Great Gatsby.
Okay.
So they had a great history.
Yeah. Wow. So your PR experience led to positions in the men's garment industry, of all things, culminating in your becoming president of 20 Ann's Young Men's Sweater Company. Tell us about this experience. And how
it's funny. I had to go to work. when I got married. So I wound up going into the garment industry as a salesperson. And I caught this one company, 20 Ons, which was a division of a Korean company. And I worked my way up to president. And
Wow.
it was 17 years in the business all total. And I got involved with quite a few things. In fact, I probably was one of the first people that actually took the Banana Republic line to the retail operations. They used to do everything by catalog, and I brought it to retail. And I had my own company with that, and I called it Saga, SAGA, for sea, air, ground apparel, and used to sell to Macy's, Bloomingdale's, you name it. But I got tired of that business. That business got to be tough.
I'll bet. That's a big business up in that New York, New Jersey area.
Well, at that time, back in the 1970s, the late 70s, early 80s, we had a $25 million business back then.
Yeah. I remember going to New York, and that's one, you'd see people selling stuff on the street. And then we would go up to this second floor. They'd have all kind of sport jackets. And, I'd be buying sport jackets, double-breasted sport jackets, the whole bit. It was crazy. I love those days. They were great days.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they were fun. I mean, they were fun. We had great parties, great shows. I used to go to Milan, Paris, all fashion shows. So it was that was the good part.
So Dennis, you were also, an entertainer, because I have this photo here. And this, of course, was a scene from I think near the end of the Feud.
That was the end of the Feud, yeah, the bows.
And so how did you go from all these different things that you did, and then you came out singing and entertaining, and how did all that happen?
I get bored easily.
Yes.
It's true. I am a true Gemini. I get bored very easily, and I like to do different things. I have a kind of a creative mind. I come up with things, and I want to do the next step. I mean, I'm 83 years old, and I'm still working on a movie for Roselli at this point. I wrote a script. In fact, at one time, it was accepted by Disney as one of the 3 scripts that John Travolta was going to play the part. And then it blew apart. And because it blew apart, that was 12, 15 years ago, I'm still hanging in there.
Yeah, you're still doing it. That's great. God bless you. I mean, that's wonderful. I wanted to mention also in your bio says that you're also a historian. And tell us about that, and what exactly does that mean in terms of the music and entertainment industries?
I've met some of the greatest entertainers and musicians in my lifetime. I mean, I can go on and name them all. But, as a historian, I know the American Songbook and Sinatra, naturally. And a lot of people don't know who Jimmy Roselli is, but he was one of the great singers of all time. And that's not just by my standards, it's by his peers. Sinatra, who had a manager by the name of Hank Senicola, when they broke up, Hank shared an office with Jimmy. And he would always tell us, Frank used to walk around saying, if I only had Roselli's pipes. That was his words, always. He was a little bit jealous of Roselli's pipes because Jimmy could hit some high notes Frank would never hit. In fact, if you listen to Jimmy's version of My Way, he hits a note at the end that, again, Frank did a great job, but it wasn't Jimmy Roselli. And meanwhile, Mel Torme, when he met Jimmy for the first time, he said to me, he said, I finally met a singer. That was his comments. Vic Damone loved him. His peers, they all do. Frank was great. Jimmy was greater because Jimmy had a heart and a soul like Frank had. Frank was the phonetical guy. He can push a note. He can breathe properly. He had great intonation. But Jimmy was a tenor, and he could hit those high notes, which attract a lot of people. They love that, So it's a kind of a funny, again, the mob had a lot of influence too. You have to understand these mob guys, when they broke up with Jimmy, they wanted to kill him. I'll be honest with you. I can say this on the air, and I can say this because most of them are dead, so I'm not worried. But they wanted to kill him, and many times I was company when it used to get the threats. And I used to tell them, you better take an insurance policy out of my wife because if anything happens to me, at least she gets something, Yeah. Well, I'll give you a quick story about that.
Okay.
There was a guy by the name of Carmine Galante. Carmine was the head of the Genovese family. And he liked Roselli. A lot of the mob guys didn't like him, but he did. But Jimmy was protected by Carlo Gambino. That was the man. Carmine Galante took a liking to Jimmy. Carmine was a tough man. He was a killer. He was a murderer. If you look up his history, it's all over the place. I'm not telling anything out of school. He asked us for one night, he says, why don't you come to lunch with me on Thursday? I'm going to my cousins, Joe and Marie. They're going on a cruise, and I'm going to have lunch with them to say goodbye. I said, you can't, Jimmy. He says, why not? I said, you got a meeting with United Artists because you're buying back your catalog. He said, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Well, Friday morning, I pick up the paper. I turn on the news, and there's Carmine Galante's picture where he's sprawled out on the floor with a cigar hanging out of his mouth. They came in, they killed him and the two guys at the table with him. And I called up Roselli right away. I said, oh, turn on the news. I said, that could have been us, you know, and that's fate. That's fate.
That's fate, is for sure.
And that's the business. That was the business back then.
Yeah, yeah. That's crazy. So you've also been the owner and CEO of DelleFave Management since January 1990. Do you still manage anyone there, or is that still active?
Oh, yeah, I do. Me.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I opened that up as I'm an employee. I'm an employer of one. Me. I did it all as a natural. I did it as an LLC, but I also did a lot of charity work too with it. I actually started my first wife passed away from cancer, and I started a clinic in Florida Atlantic University. And my partners at the time were Dr. Gene Coyne, who was the co-inventor of the CAT scan with General Electric, and Dr. Michael Nobel of the Nobel Prize family. So we started this clinic at Florida Atlantic University, and it was for cancer research.
Okay. Wow. I didn't know all that. That's amazing. Let's go back to Jimmy Roselli for a second. I want to play something because I want to tell you how I learned about Jimmy Roselli, because, you know, I had a band called We Three, and we had that band I had that band for 49 years, and we did a lot of Italian music, but it was a dance band, and we played a lot of private parties and weddings and things like that. And we played American dance music, and we played Italian dance music. So we played all this, right? And so because of my connection with the Italian, you know, Jimmy Roselli's name came up, and somebody, did you ever hear it? I said, no. So, you know, a long time ago, you know, I started listening to him. So one year, and this is like in the late 70s, early 80s, I was working a piano bar. A friend of mine came in, and people used to come to the mic and sing, you know, they passed the mic around the bar. And this one guy, his name was Jimmy Monick, had a really sweet voice. And he sang, he said, you know, the song When Your Old Wedding Ring Was New. I said, no, I never heard of that. You know, he said, Jimmy Roselli. I said, oh, I've heard of him. I said, but I just never heard that song. He said, well, here's how it goes. And he sang it, and I just kind of eared it out on the piano to follow him. And I fell in love with the song. I absolutely fell in love with that song. And I thought to myself, you know, we play all these parties and anniversary parties. Of course, you play the anniversary waltz or the anniversary song. I said, that would have been a perfect song to play for an anniversary, right?
Absolutely.
So when my wife's name is Lana, and this year we'll be married 53 years in December. And when we,
how did she do it?
I asked her the same thing. How do we stay married all that time? Me being a musician and traveling around. Anyhow, so when we had our 50th wedding anniversary, for more or less for a gift for her, I put together a video of all these pictures from our wedding and different things, different times in our lives with our kids. And guess what music I used in the background? So this is well before I knew you, well before I was involved in the Feud, When Your Old Wedding Ring Was New. So I want to play this. And first of all, I want to show this. This is the album cover from When Your Old Wedding Ring Was New. That was it. And I love, you know, it's such a great tune.
That was recorded in London.
Is that right?
The whole album, yeah. We used Peter Moore as the arranger. Peter was Engelbert Humperdinck's arranger, and the arranger, chief arranger for BBC in London.
Okay. Oh, I'm going to play, and you're going to hear Jimmy Roselli singing When Your Old Wedding Ring Was New, and you're going to see Vito and Lana, a lot of pictures of us in the whole thing.
Go for it. Looking forward to it.
When your old wedding ring was new, and each dream that I've dreamed came true, I remember with pride how we stood side by side. What a beautiful picture you made as my bride, even though silver crowns your hair. I can still see the gold ringlets there. Love's old flame is the same as the day I changed your name. When your old wedding ring was new. I remember with pride how we stood side by side. What a beautiful picture you made as my bride, even though silver crowns your hair. I can still see the gold ringlets there. Love's old flame is the same as the day that I changed your name. When your old wedding ring was when your old wedding ring was new.
And there you go. Wait.
Well done. I mean, really, that song, it kind of replaced the anniversary song in a way for a lot of people because of the meaning. Like the way you showed your videos, it hits that song right on the head, you know. It was just a wonderful tune for him. Became very, very popular. That song got him a lot of play in London and Scotland.
Oh, okay.
Big time. And what happened? It led to gigs at the Palladium and Royal Albert Hall for him. You know, and in fact, one time during the shows, he had a contingent of people from Scotland that came to his show in Westbury, Long Island, and they about 10 of them. And I had to bring them backstage. And he said to me, bring them backstage. They travel that far. I want to see them, And it was just he was good that way. Jimmy would never leave a performance unless everybody who was waiting online for an autograph got one. He never cut anybody off. He was unusual that way, but he was also a very stubborn man at the same time.
Is that right?
Oh, let me tell you, if I wanted him to do something like if for his favor, to give him an idea, I would never tell him it was from me. What I would do is say, I heard somebody mention, and I'd make sure I'd give him the information. And about 2 weeks later, he says, you know what? I got an idea. And he would come up with the same thing I told him 2 weeks before. But that's the way he was, and I accepted it, and I lived with it for 48 years.
Wow. So let me ask you this question. It's interesting because here's a picture here where you have Jimmy Roselli. Now, here's a question, because I never, Jimmy Roselli, one of the things that attracted me to him was he sang a lot of Italian American, like Italian songs, Neapolitan songs. I mean, he sang that whole repertoire where I never heard Sinatra sing, that kind of music, or am I wrong?
Frank recorded only one song, which was Sorrento in Italian. But he tried to do it. Yeah, he tried to do it phonetically, and it didn't come off that well. It just didn't come off. He in his beautiful way that he did English, his phonetics were great. But when he tried to do it in Italian, instead of saying "Vedo mare come bella," he would say "Vedo mare come bello," and and it didn't come off right. But look, Frank was. We were in Vegas. Frank was performing in the big room. He was there for 2 weeks while we were there, and Jimmy and I sat in the back of that room every night. And Jimmy sat with his head on his arm like this, like he was going to school, just watching Sinatra perform. As much as they didn't get along, Jimmy respected his talent. When Frank died, when I tell you that many times we would be joking about Sinatra, and he would say things like, I can't wait for the ground that's coming to him, things like that off the cuff.
Yeah.
But when Frank died, Jimmy actually cried like a baby.
Wow.
Actually, in fact, he went on stage that night and he said, ladies and gentlemen, a legend passed away. This is for you, Frank. And he pointed up and he sang My Way. Well, I got to tell you, the tears in that audience, you could, the floor was wet. That's how that audience, 3,000 people. But he really felt it. In fact, there's a Good Morning America interview where he's being interviewed and he tells the story and he started to choke up and he said, let's change the subject. So there was an admiration there, and Frank always reached out for him. I'll be honest with you. Frank reached out for Jimmy, but Jimmy was afraid to have a relationship with him because he knew that Frank at times would be a very abusive person. So he didn't want to put himself in that position,
I see.
And that's what he did. He lived till the day he died. That was it.
Wow. That's interesting. Wow. So let's talk about you writing the Feud. So you experienced all this between Roselli and Sinatra, and now all of a sudden you decide, hey, I'm gonna document this, right? And then it becomes a great stage.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what happened. One night I was in a place called the Limehouse with a wise guy.
Okay.
And he said that Jimmy was already passed. And I happened to be going up to New York for that ride. I don't know why, but I was in New York. And he said to me, he says, nobody's ever, one guy wrote a book about Roselli calling Making the Wise Guys Weep. And truly they did. Every time they went to a performance, over Wedding Ring and Little Pal, they'd be crying their eyes out.
Yeah.
So he said to me, why don't somebody document it? And I decided to do it. But I had to wait for a couple of guys to die, to be honest with you. But it took me about, I would say, all told, 5 years to put it together,
Okay.
And I had to time it. I had to time it with the music. That's why when I timed it with the music, Frank's original song, and I tell the story about how he sang his first recording with Tommy Dorsey, So I had to put all the songs in a time slot. And that's what I still do. I try to keep them in a time slot, which is it's an interesting story. He's got a story that is truly rags to riches. I mean, not being born with a father and mother, being raised by a Neapolitan grandfather who couldn't speak English. He had to go out on his own, 9 years old, shining shoes on a street corner, going into bars and singing, sneaking the money that he made, that his grandfather wouldn't take everything from him. He'd give his grandfather a certain amount of money, then he'd hide the rest in a chimney on top of the roof, Wow. And by the way, his grandfather knew the whole time he hid the money, but he just he let it go. But Jimmy had a tough life growing up. He didn't have a mother and father to tell him, hey, don't go near the stairs, don't walk in the street. And he toughened him up. It really did. Frank was well taken care of by his parents. Frank, like I say in the play, he calls him Little Lord Fauntleroy, which he was. He always had good clothes and everything else. But Jimmy imitated him in a lot of ways. He wore the hanky inside, the red hanky inside the tuxedo, always performing in a tuxedo, which Jimmy always did, 99% of the time, so to speak. He, like I said, his intonation was Sinatra, to be honest with you. And Frank was very admirable of him too. He knew it. He knew what he was, It was a tough situation, but Jimmy was stubborn. He was probably his own worst enemy when it came to getting ahead. Why he wasn't a worldwide name. He certainly had a worldwide talent. But I tried as best as I could. Every time I had a radio show, I always brought him on, made sure I played his music on stations that were not ASCAP or BMI. I did it anyway. I didn't care, just to press the name. I was his historian. And I also knew about the other guys, Al Martino. I knew about guys like Vic Damone, what they went through, Jerry Vale. I knew these guys. So when I call myself a historian, it's because I have not only the American songbook in my background and the Italian Neapolitan songs, because I speak Italian, mostly with a Neapolitan dialect because of the music, because I do the music. And when I go to Italy, inevitably, if I find a piano player, I'm singing all the Neapolitan songs in Italy, and I go to Italy every year, once or twice a year. So it was a tough life, but it was a fun life, to be honest with you,
That's amazing. Yeah. It had to be a lot of fun, really.
Oh, yeah. When I was single, there was a lot of girls, too.
That helps.
It certainly did. It offset the pay.
Yeah, right. Well, when I remember the early days with Sinatra and all those girls in the audience screaming about, when he'd start singing and all that stuff, that was like went together like milk and honey, Anyhow, I want to talk about, so when you started airing the Feud and you started showing the actually producing the show in different places, you sang the role of Jimmy Roselli.
I sang the role of Roselli. I did it because I didn't trust anybody else to have the same Neapolitan dialect or nuances that Roselli had on stage.
I see.
And so because I knew him so well, I didn't copy him. I wasn't impersonating him, but I was copying the form of the way he sang, like at the end with the trills, like la. That's a Neapolitan trait. Yeah. And if you didn't have that, and I knew that I couldn't do this forever at 80. At that time, I was 79. I made the decision that if somebody can come in and replace me at some point, that would be good, but I wanted to make sure that person could do what I did. And that was the important thing.
Oh, you picked the right.
And when we found Aaron, they called me up and we got a guy. I said, let me hear him. And I said, he's good. Do it,
Yeah, Aaron knows that Neapolitan repertoire. It's unbelievable. He knows the whole repertoire.
Listen, it's not an easy thing to do, the Neapolitan music. People don't realize that. What Roselli always taught me was that the most important thing, because I grew up as an Italian speaking person, being first generation, I knew what the words meant. A lot of guys sing it phonetically and they don't know what the hell they're singing about.
Right.
And the most important thing is know. That's why when I did it, I also put the same heart and soul that Roselli put in it. Not copying him, but it's just normally coming out of me. I guess being around him for 48 years and
Sure.
something rubbed off.
Sure.
But
I
we
always
had a great relationship.
used to say there's Italian music and there's Neapolitan music because they're two
Two different
words.
things. Two
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah.
The
sure.
Neapolitans sing about the sea. They sing about the town, and thirdly, they speak about their wives. The women are last.
Yeah.
It's the whole the generation thing. But Neapolitans have heart. They
Let
have
me
a heart that
Yeah,
you just
no,
don't understand.
you're absolutely right. You're right. I show you this here photo,
Yeah.
and this is on the far right in the black shirt is Aaron Caruso, and then on the left is this Chaz, and his name is Chaz Esposito. And he plays the part of Sinatra.
That's the right way to say it. Esposito, not Esposito. Esposito.
Esposito. Yeah, I had a little Italian in my background. and then the bartender in the middle, sitting down, is Peter McClung. He's played the part of the bartender,
And he was very good.
What's really interesting, I conducted probably a dozen, like at the high school level, Broadway musicals, and of course you have casts of thousands, right? And this show really was great because you had these three were the characters, and behind them you had the band, and you had a great, you had a horn section, you had the rhythm section. It was just perfect. And you had the band, and then these three guys. That was the whole show, and that was like amazing to me. And it was about the music. The music was all so good, all classic.
A lot of it was arranged by the piano player, which is Jason Bulow, and
Right.
Jason used to be my many years ago, 30-something years ago. He was an intern for me at the Boca Pops Orchestra. And he was, for 3 years, he was Engelbert Humperdinck's arranger and conductor, and also recorded with Melissa Manchester. Great musician.
I actually spoke with him after the show because, just to tell him what a great job he did. And I didn't know all the background with the Boca group and all that, but he's a terrific musician. Let me play this. I have a little excerpt from the Feud. I want to play this, okay?
When there are gray skies, I don't mind the gray skies. I have you, my sunny boy. Friends, my friends all forsake me. Let them all forsake. Remember, my lady, God, sing that song for me. Soft and low, just as though you had me harmony. A million baby kisses, I'm trying to do. If you would only let me sing about the river, rockabye, your rockabye, baby, with a Dixie bell melody. Gave you the best of my years, sweetheart, but you paid me back with tears. Revenge can be sweet after all we've been through. Why should I hurt you or go with you? You know that I could make you cry, but I'm about to say goodbye, 'cause I've lost all my love for you. I've lost all my love for you.
Buddy was the best at what he did. Nobody did it better. I mean, let's face it.
he knew how to take care of an audience and bring them in. I had to only use my voice. But actually, I didn't do so bad with those Italian grandmothers and grandfathers. And the girls that would come up. When Elvis was in town, and you had Elvis, and you had guys like Tom Jones, they were swinging and swaying and everything. And the girls were throwing panties on the stage and bras. My audience, I got corrective stockings, corsets. Every once in a while, a walk would fly up on
There you go.
Good-looking guy. Where'd you get him from?
I had to search long and hard.
It's funny. I still do a one-man show of this, and in fact, this November I've got 4 shows coming up in November, and it's a one-man show of the same type of thing, but only I tell the stories differently, and I do a little bit of different music, and I have a deal. I sold the show to Mark Danny, who produced the ones in Naples. And
Okay.
we have a friendly agreement, that back and forth. I give him money, he gives me money. I like this. This is very good. I'm just hoping he gives me more money than I give him. But no, it's a great. And what I do is more of a tribute show as opposed to the actual story of a 3-man play. But the play, there's a lot of my heart is in that show. You have to understand that I had a very close relationship with Jimmy. We were the best of friends. I saw him almost the day before he died. I had to go back and I did the eulogy at his funeral in Hoboken. But
Wow.
he ate his last meal with me when he was with hospice at home. He wasn't eating, and I drove 4.5 hours over from Boca to Clearwater, Florida, because his wife had called me and said he's on his last breath. And when I went there, he saw me, he jumped up out of bed. Dennis, I said, come on, Rosie, let's eat. And we would eat. And we ate, and it was the last meal he ever had. We would play gin rummy sometimes 20 hours. we would go after each other like crazy. One time I beat him for $500, and I came home to Boca. He calls me 2 days later. He says, I'm flying in, pick me up at the airport. I said, why? He said, I hate the fact that you beat me for $500. I want my money back. And he flew in. Well, he won $250 back, and I quit. He said, what are you doing? I said, that's it. I still got $250 of your money. I'm not playing anymore. And he got so upset.
That's funny.
Yeah, we had a lot of good times that way.
The last part of his life in Clearwater, Florida. Is that right?
Yes, he did. He did. He had a beautiful home overlooking the Hudson in Jersey City, New Jersey, right on the border of Hoboken in Jersey City and Union City. It was like a tri-area. And beautiful home, 3 stories high, 4 stories high, with beautiful, he had made like an atrium, and he had the whole New York skyline at night was his view. And but he liked Florida. He liked Florida. So when he first came down, he bought a place in Venice, and then he decided he wanted to go to Clearwater, and he found a beautiful apartment. I think it was 3,000 square feet, and right on the beach in Clearwater. And
Nice.
That's where he passed away,
At what age did he die?
Jimmy was 85 when he passed. Frank was 83 when he died.
Wow,
Yeah.
close.
Yeah, they died, but Frank was 10 years older. Frank was born in 1915. Jimmy was born in 1925. Roselli was a tough guy. I mean, he was. We got along well because sometimes for 3 or 4 months we wouldn't talk to each other. I'd say, the hell with it, leave me alone, and I'd walk away. And then he just, all of a sudden I'd get a call. Hey, Cugi, in Italian, cousin, where you been? I was going to send you flowers to your wife. I thought maybe you passed away. You didn't tell me. I said, what do you want? He said, well, let's go. Let's have lunch. I said, you don't talk to me for 3 months. Now you want to have lunch. Now I'm your best buddy again. Oh, come on, stop already. But that's Italians. That's what we do.
Yeah, yes, that's true. Happens in every family too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, people think today that, politics has split up families. I said, having arguments. I said, what are you talking about? Italians have been doing this for years.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's exactly. I saw it with my families, when I was a kid growing up. That was crazy. That's
The
interesting.
hollering and screaming, right? The hollering and they're hollering and screaming. No, they're not. They're talking.
Yeah, that's just normal conversation, right?
That was it. That was it.
Yeah. I have Well, I just want to show this real quick. This was the poster from the Naples
Yep.
performances. There were two in the same day, and we were lucky enough to get tickets to go and see it. It's not that far from where I live in this theater zone. But anyhow, just wanted to show that. And then this was a scene from the actual show. I took there, as you see, Aaron and
Right.
everybody there.
They also did it in Connecticut about 2 months before that.
Yeah, that's right. Aaron told me that. Yeah, that was the first show he did
Yeah.
was in Connecticut. Yeah, he told me that. That's great. So tell me, before I just have another photo that I'm going to show, and I have another excerpt from the Feud that I want to show, video. But before I do, tell me another story or two about your whole journey, whether it's with Jimmy Roselli or
My journey, I'll tell you the truth. It's when I think about the things that I've done in my lifetime. I mean, I've even flown the Goodyear blimp, and I did it by accident. I happened to have I won a ticket when they used to let civilians fly in the blimp as a publicity thing. I had a ticket to do this, and as I'm sitting there and I'm watching the guy, and he said to me, and I asked him questions. He goes, "Would you like to fly this?" I said, "Can I?" He says, "Yeah," because I had taken glider lessons, and we were talking about that. And I sat in the chair, and it's amazing. It's 2 pedals, left and right, and it's a one wheel, like a wheelchair wheel for up and down. So for 25 minutes, he let me fly it over the coast of Florida from Fort Lauderdale to Boca and back, And he says, "We don't let many people do this," he said. I said, "Well, I can imagine, because there's not that many blimp pilots in the world." So I consider myself very fortunate to have had that experience. But that happened to me a lot. I've done a lot of stuff that normally other people don't do. I'm just lucky. Let's put it to you that way. I'm always at the right place at the right time for these kind of things. Meeting celebrities. One time I was in Detroit, Michigan, and I was in the shoe business back then with Bostonian shoes. And I hear the associate buyer saying on the phone, "I'm sorry, Bob, but I can't get your shoes made anymore." And he goes, "No, your feet are too big. They're 22. Nobody can make them." So I said, "Who's that?" And it was Bob Lanier of the Detroit Pistons, who's a Hall of Famer today, right? Yeah. And he had a size 22 shoe. I said, "Give me the phone." So I took the phone. I said, "Bob, my name is Dennis DelleFave. I happen to be a good friend, which I am, of Oscar Robertson, the Big O." So I said, "I can get your shoes made." And sure enough, I made shoes for Bob Lanier. We became very good friends.
Wow.
But and Oscar was another story. I met him at a show, and we took a liking to each other because I played in the semi-pro leagues in basketball, and I also coached. So we had a lot in common, So to this day, Oscar and I are very close friends.
Well, you've done a lot of things, Dennis. A lot of things.
Yeah, I can't even remember them all, to be honest with you. That's why I'm writing memoirs.
Yeah. That's important. You're right. You should document all of that.
Yeah, because this way, when I die, I can leave it to nobody.
All right, let me show you this picture. Tell me about this young lady.
Oh, it's my beautiful bride, Irina. It's funny that it's not funny. I was married twice before, and I lost 2 wives to illness. Oh. And I thought my life was basically over. I was 56 the first time, and the second time I was in my 60s, 66. And then she came along. And I'll be honest with you, she's been the greatest companion I could get. She's from Russia originally, and I'm Italian. So we have 2 diversified backgrounds of family and food and things like that. But sure. we do very well together. We travel. We love to travel with each other. And it's really it's great to have somebody in your life that cares again, and because I thought I'd never find it. That's another part I'm lucky at. 3 beautiful women, 3 beautiful wives.
Here you go. I'm still on number 1. I don't know what's going on.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, well, I told her, how long we stay married all these years?
Hey, listen, marriage is the most difficult thing in the world. People don't realize it is very difficult because you're living 2 personalities.
I always said that, and I said, we would talk about different people come and stay here. And her mother, Lana's mother's still living. She's 96. God bless. And she's lived with us here in Naples for about 4.5 months over the winter. And I said, Atlanta, I said, it's hard, it's hard enough when you're with somebody that you know really well, like your spouse, that you live with for many years, to get along and to, co-inhabit, much less bring somebody else into the picture that's not, your loving spouse, but another relationship. It's not easy, it's not easy, but
It never is. Never is.
Yeah, we enjoy having, like different members of our family. We just had our 3 grandkids come down and visit us, and we enjoy all that, But,
I think that's more. I never had any children, and so naturally, I never had the grandchildren and things like that.
Sure.
I did have them. My second wife had grandkids, so I lived with that for a while until she passed. But it's different, Like now, I'm alone. When I say alone, my wife and I are both alone. And if anything happens to either one of us, it is what it is. It's life. I look at myself and I'm saying, okay, today I'm 83. When will I make it to 84? Well, if this was 20 years ago, I worried about making it to the next year because of the guys. But now I'm just worried about it's like illnesses. I only take 1 pill, thank goodness. I take now maybe a second pill, but knock wood. So far, so good.
Good for you. That's very good.
That's why I still perform. I still perform because it keeps me young.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
it keeps me young.
I say every
and
day.
I love entertaining. That's it.
That's great. That's great, and it does keep you young when you're out there in front of the audience.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
I mean, I don't have wrinkles yet.
I do. My wife tells me about that all the time. But I say every day's a blessing and every day's a challenge at this age, and I'm.
I look at it this way. I've gone through the tough times and I've gone through the easy times, and to me it doesn't matter. They equal each other out. They basically equal each other out.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I love what you do. See, because I used to love radio. To me, radio was the greatest thing I ever did when it comes to personally. Because radio, I used to tell people I'm naked. They didn't know. What the hell did they know? Except my producer, who was a girl in the booth. She used to look at me, she goes, he's lying, he's got clothes on. I think I'm the only guy on radio that I had a talent show once, and I had 3 performers scheduled. And so my producer said to me, I don't understand. You never told me about this talent show. I said, well, I thought I'd surprise you. She goes, who do you have? I said, I have a piano player, a singer, and a guitar player. She goes, I don't see any of them in the studio. I said, well, they couldn't make it, but I got 3 substitutes. She goes, what do you have? I said, I have a juggler, a card shark, I said, and a mime. She goes, how are you going to produce that on radio? And what I did is I described each one, what they were doing, right? And I told people, call in, you win a dinner if you pick the right person. And guess what? The juggler won.
Oh, gee, that's funny.
So that's the stuff I do.
Yeah, that's typical radio stuff, right? For sure. Well, Dennis, I have one more excerpt I want to play of the Feud. Let me play this, and then after it's over, you could talk about it.
It's so this likes California. It's cold and it's damp. That's why the lady. That is why the lady. That's why.
Just as though you had me underneath.
I've been a puppet, a pumper, a pirate, a poet, a born a king. I've been up and down and over and out, and I know one thing. Each time I find myself laying flat on my face, I pick myself up and get back.
You gotta understand something. Frank Sinatra, he had a huge ego. And he likened himself like a showbiz mafia don, if you know what I mean. Rumor had it, he had the entertainer Tommy Sands banned from the United States because of the bitter divorce he had with Frank's younger daughter, Nancy.
When your old wedding ring was new, and the dreams that we dreamed came true.
Little town blues. Take nothing away. I'll make a brand new start of it in old New York.
Quando me lasciò, non dai più queste domande. Torna Sorrento, fammi campare
To sail lazy fields and hours of years. The record shows I was in the books and did it all.
And there you go. Nice.
Did I write that?
I'm sorry.
Did I write that?
I think so.
Sometimes I can't believe I got it done, really. And produced it. I owe Mark Zanni that accolade. He was the first one to pick it up and say, I want to do it in my theater.
Nice.
So,
Yeah.
and Mark is a great producer, great director. And his wife, they just, Karen, her name is, and she's a wonderful choreographer. So that they run a great theater.
Absolutely, and it was wonderful to see that. I felt so lucky to be able to see the show. It was great.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. That's the most important
we
thing.
really did. We really did. I hope it comes back on here. Again in this area. I don't know.
Well, it's a funny thing because Mark has a situation with his. I keep saying to him, maybe you might want to do it every year, only because we could change it every year. Instead of seeing the same thing all the time. And I thought that maybe that might be for instance, if not, we could do the one-man show and bring that in. That would be a little bit different because I tell different stories, and I think it would be well worth it. The fans loved it. Apparently, the people loved it because we got standing ovations the first time we did it in 2022, and the last time we did it.
That's awesome. Well, Dennis, I got to tell you, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, anytime. You're welcome back too, because you have.
Okay, how about tomorrow? Is that okay?
I'm sure we didn't touch on a fraction of the stories that you know.
There's plenty of them. There's plenty of them.
Yeah.
When you have all the years that I have, know a lot of things.
I believe it.
But I love the way you do your show, and I thank you so much for having me on. That's important.
You're quite welcome. It's my pleasure for sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
You have a great evening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. And there you go, another episode of Memories of a Musician with Dennis DelleFave. What a wonderful guy, and interesting. What a career. And so many different things, and his affiliation with Jimmy Roselli is just amazing. And I don't know. I think I listened to Jimmy Roselli from 35 years ago, listening to his music. Terrific singer. So I was really familiar when I heard about the Feud. I wasn't familiar with the Feud itself, but I was familiar with Jimmy Roselli and his music and his voice. Amazing. So looking ahead to next Wednesday, August 19th, be sure to tune in to meet my special guest, Deb Weibel. Deb Weibel has been playing drums and performing in the Pittsburgh area for over 45 years. As a freelance musician, she currently performs with the Pittsburgh Doo-Wop Big Band, the Riverview Jazz Ensemble, West Hills Symphonic Band, and many other small jazz groups and combos. In addition to her involvement in the music industry, Deb worked as a field geologist and project manager at several engineering consulting firms before starting Geo-Environmental Drilling Company Incorporated, where she served as president and general manager for 32 years. Interesting. Talk about different things you do as a musician. As a musician and drummer, her performance highlights include performing with the World Civic Orchestra at New York's Lincoln Center, backing Sinatra performer Brian Dupre's shows in Pittsburgh with the Rat Pack in Symphonic Sinatra, and backing doo-wop groups Willie Winfield and the Harp Tones, the Paragons, the Four Aces, and the Jesters. Deb also performed with the Three Rivers Saxophone Quartet for their 50th anniversary concert. And you might remember, because the Three Rivers Saxophone Quartet was a guest on my show, as well as their leader, founder and leader, Marino Galuzzo, was also a guest on the show early on. And they commissioned me to compose a piece for their 50th anniversary concert. Deb also has a love of musical theater and has performed in over 100 musical productions with local community theaters, universities, alumni groups, and high schools. The episode will be streamed live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Deb Weibel on Memories of a Musician on Wednesday, August 19th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for tuning in and have a great evening.